It's the state of the dungeon! It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Rob and welcome to my State of the Dungeon address. This is for the game of Mighty Protectors that took place on November 5th, 2020. Running out of 2020. So, we started off with the group back at base and talking with not only Veronica, their team lead, but also some of the new up-and-coming heroes who had joined their group. It was pretty clear that these are just dumb college or high school to pre-college kids who had just all gotten superpowers, not beta level, but useful in their own more limited ways. And quite honestly, they were kind of looking up to the party, so they kind of took a hand with them as best as they could. Now, as far as watching them train and their overall usefulness, obviously they're a junior varsity level team compared to the group being the proper varsity, but at the same time, they are now more than just their own little group. They're a team of sorts. So they already understood what their next goal was, and that was to go and get their family back and then make a direct strike against Foxhaven. Again, this is taking advantage of the narrowing window of opportunity that they've got that Warbridge doesn't know they're alive. So it's time to go and get their family back to get rid of that potential lever against the group and to raid his cupboards, basically. So the plan was put forward that they were to be sent off to California. The place that they had discovered their families were located in was an experimental community that was put together with research from Berkeley to try to come up with the ultimate eco-neighborhood. It was kind of an abandoned project that mysterious owners now kind of controlled, clearly run by Warbridge and company. So, and this is where the families had been stashed, as well as other nefarious things. Veronica told them that some of the human trafficking that Warbridge was involved with went through this area too. So they were sent off, and again, pulling some strings, Veronica had an agent from the CIA to pick them up and clear their way out of the airport so that they could go off to hit their target. Again, in a unregistered U-Haul van. Classic. So they drove to the site. They did the appropriate things with getting satellite imagery on the location. They stopped outside before they would actually go into the place, and there were barriers up and cameras. So that they drove up and they turned around because they didn't want to tip their hand right away. They sent in their specialist astrally to check out what's available, what's there. And she's got a big brain to her. Syghost located the families, first of all. She also determined that much of the buildings were wired to explode. They had bombs everywhere. But the places looked fairly idyllic, and outside of the armed patrols outside, they looked like they had been taken care of fairly well. She also found out that there were several large buildings that were just full of people. Also where to explode. So the group decided they were going to do their assault. First of all, their group had been given one of the new recruits to help them out. This would be formerly Leisure Suit Guy, who has the ability to make doors from one place to another without passing in between. Basically a limited dimensional door ability. And they could test the abilities out in this particular regard by allowing them to cover the area from just observational range to right in the backyard of Takashi's Takeshi's parents, or his mother and sister. And from there, since it was dark, they were going to break out. They located that one of the houses was set for security. It was connected to all the other ones. It had advanced communication equipment so that they could call out to wherever. And that was a target, certainly. So they decided to send Stealth Muscles. Muscles has discovered the value of his duplication ability. So both of Muscles A and Muscles B, attacked that house. One by basically diving pretty much into the house, and the other one providing cover. So diving through the house, crashing through the satellite uplink dishes and into the computer itself, Muscles began to take on the house guards, and he was quickly reinforced by himself, with Muscles A crashing into the guards and pretty much subduing them. It really wasn't a fight. Muscles versus Normals is not a fight. And as he heard the sounds of armed resistance coming up, because they were on the second floor, he jumped out to rejoin the group. Now, the others were prepared to go out. Takeshi, of course, got together his family, and Saigos flew over and got her family. And for the most part, things went fairly smoothly. But it does turn out that the guards, the patrols, came about in force to try to curtail things. And of course, it wasn't so much that the group was worried about being shot, they were worried about the families who couldn't protect themselves. So Muscles struck first and attacked one wave of the guards, and the group basically dominated them pretty well. And this was all being done while Rook had completely blanketed the area. So no calls were getting out, and Rook took care of, Sentinel took care of part of the patrol. Saigos blasted part of the patrol. They took care of the low-level thugs who were out and about in this city. So then they dimension door back to where with slight hiccups, but nothing serious, to the vehicle that was going to take them to the airport so that they could fly across country in a supersonic to get to Foxhaven. And this, again, was arranged by Veronica pulling strings. Well, when they did this, there was a slight problem. It turns out that when they got out of the area, well, it turns out that Rook wasn't blanketing the area anymore, so the people who were not knocked out, of which there were several, pulled out their phones and reported in. So some aspects of the surprise were lost. Although, by using the supersonic flight, they were able to fly across the United States up into Canada to strike directly at Foxhaven in Newfoundland. And for the most part, things went pretty well. The idea was that Dorman was going to open up a door, and the problem was it was only going to be stationary in regards to having to have a floor, but then it would fly back because it was stationary, and anybody who was in front of it would pass through, which actually worked out quite well when they understood how it worked. The only downside to all of this was that they were relying on him, sending them someplace that he had never been. And his skills aren't that good yet. Yeah, he's just kind of a dumb college kid, college kid. So he didn't exactly get them where they wanted to be, necessarily. He got them into a supply closet, which actually worked out pretty well. Rather than them having to worry about any of the initial ground defenses, they ended up inside of the base itself and proceeded to move through the base. Now, for the most part, the guards didn't do a great deal to stop them. Yes, they're very disciplined. Yes, they're pretty quick. No, they're not up to taking on superheroes. So the limited engagements the group had with the guards who were there went very one-sidedly. Nobody got seriously hurt. Things went fairly well, and they also discovered that Dorman has the ability to create horizontal doors and he can open up trapdoors underneath people and teleport them away, which he started doing, and it was fairly effective. But for the most part, the group, worked out pretty well together, as they are a finely honed team this time. So they started going to try to acquire their targets. The first thing they did was they went to the infirmary. That was their first target, because they are trying to get the gal who has the healing abilities on their side. She is a priority. And the group had already also determined that they wanted to see if they could recover Chauffeur. And they appeared, or they got eventually to the infirmary. They kind of started out on the wrong side of Foxhaven, but they eventually went through without too much difficulty. And got there, and they had to get inside, which was relatively easy with Norman there. And they had to convince her that it was actually all screwed up, and that Warbridge was not a nice guy, and that she was being used for her powers. And it wasn't a very terribly hard sell. She had her suspicions when she saw the treatment that Chauffeur had gotten. Close-range gunshot wound, and she was told specifically not to let him be able to walk. She was not allowed to heal the spinal damage that he had received. Warbridge wanted him immobile. That definitely did not jibe with her sense of how medicine's supposed to work. So she was a bit put off by that, and it was finally confirmed when the group came up to her and said, "This is all bonkers. You can't do this. You can't go through this." And she decided she was going to work with the group, which is good. That's kind of what they needed. But, they found out some other information too, such as... Actually, they ended up in the cells. I am mistaken. They did not end up in the storeroom. They ended up in a cell. So they came out of the cell block. Fair enough, though. But at any rate, the results are still pretty much the same. By this point, they are passing through. They need to get out of the arsenal a couple of devices that they very much want. So how to get there? Well, they sent Zygos astrally again. But this time there was a bit of a surprise for her. She was immediately sucked into basically an astral prison. And she wasn't able to get out. It was stronger than she was. And she saw a golden figure, an astral person, standing there, who greeted her, and it's Sven. Sven is now able to project himself astrally. And he created this knowing that she would eventually come back to Foxhaven, because he had intuited that they had not died. He can puzzle things together fairly well, and realized that it was only a matter of time before she came knocking again. So he constructed this so that he'd be sure to be able to talk to her when she did. And he's like, "Look, I'm not on Warbridge's side. I'm not on your side, however. I'm my own person. I understand how things could be. I understand perhaps how things should be, and I'm going to make my own way in the world. I'm not working for you. On the other hand, I am grateful for you for initially getting me off of that boat. I had no resources. There wasn't much I could do. And then you interrupted and showed me a whole new range of possibilities, and now here we are. I can do my work, and I do owe you. So I owe you a favor, sure, but at the same time, I'll help you a bit, but you can't rely on me. I'm not your team. I'm going to go off and do what I need to do." So she was probably a little disappointed. That Sven is a decent guy, but now his power has kind of made him a very hot commodity with his levels of intelligence, intuitive inventing, and so Warbridge is somewhat scared of him, and Veronica is leery of him, so yeah. So at this point they found out that Warbridge is no longer on site. Yeah, with only about a 2-hour head start after he found out that the base had been attacked, he left. But Veronica still said the things that they were after they could still get. So they are preparing to get the last things that they need from Foxhaven. They're trying to get Tom. Tom is a priority. the couple of objects in the arsenal that she knows about are priority. And any other things that they want, pretty much, including any other gifted who are still at Foxhaven. And they know that the 2 girls are there, who they rescued again off of the boat. So the 2 shadow twins. Despite the fact they're not twins, but their powers are interrelated. They're there. They can get a hold of them. That would be fantastic. And of course, anything else they can do. Now, they were also warned that this place would eventually become known to the Canadian government again. They were going to smash all of Warbridge's secrets, or Clayton as she calls him. And that hopefully will draw the Foxhaven chapter to an end, but there's still more to do. There's always surprises and twists and turns, eh? So until that time, true believers, we will bring up again the next step in the story of the Gifter Saga. So thank you for joining me. I've been Rob. This has been my State of the Dungeon address. Until next time, thank you and farewell. One other final note, however. It seems that until further notice, the player of Muscles is not going to be with us anymore. That's unfortunate. That is, of course, the way of life. Sometimes it happens. So it's been a pleasure to have Muscles' character. He will be successfully taken out of the story while his player is gone. He will not be just killed off, however, because things can change. So we'll see how it all turns out. Until next time, though, farewell.